This video is called Debunking GBN's latest verses they've brought to your attention about renovated earth to try to prove that God is wrathful enough he's destroying every element, even gold. They don't believe in gold in heaven because they believe God is destroying that element, and he's destroying every element to where heaven is not even made of the elements of the universe or on earth. And so, and Mike Hickson makes that clear in the GBN video. And I must first tell you that B.J. Clark wouldn't study this with me because he said, and I consider this a lie. He said that they only study the milk of the word at the School of Preaching, which is conversion passages, and they don't get into anything other than just conversion passages. Now, you may say this that he's staying truthful because this has to do with converting you into believing that God is wrathful enough that he destroys every element on the periodical chart. But I've addressed the two scriptures in passage, and I'm going to address them again because they bring up one of them. They bring them up, but they don't discuss them. And I have defined those words. And you need to see my YouTube to know that fervent is only a feeling, okay? And that we're tried with fire. I'm going to show you that the context of these verses they're talking about talks about we're tried with fire, and they didn't want to read that to you because they're trying to say, oh, God's going to destroy heaven and everything. They don't want to show you that the fire tries us. First, D. Berry quoted 1 Peter 1, 3, and 4. It says, who hath begotten us to a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you. And he stopped reading right there. And the next verse says, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. So heaven is to be revealed on earth. Heaven is not to be discovered by people who have died and people who are still alive to go and travel to discover heaven. That's not what's to be done, because it says it will be revealed in the last time. And DeBerry didn't read the next verse when he said that it's reserved in heaven. Also, in verse 7, it says your faith is tried with fire. And so that is not physical flame that tries our faith. And we become more faithful in God because we got burnt. That is not true. And that's what these men on this panel of GBN want you to believe. They want you to believe that we're going to be burnt with fire, and the fire in the Bible is to burn you. But I've done an outline with hundreds of fire passages from the Bible, all the fire passages in the Bible. You need to outline them, and you need to see my renovated earth because I go over them. And fire is not flame fire in the Bible. That's why it says our faith is tried with fire here in this passage. And then they mention 1 Thessalonians 4:17, will meet him in the clouds, and so shall be with him with the Lord. So shall we ever be with the Lord. Now I want you to read also Matthew 23:30 is an account of this same verse. They didn't read it. But it says the Son of Man coming in the clouds. So he left in a cloud that went out of the atmosphere. And clouds do not leave the atmosphere. They can't. And also he's coming back in a cloud. And we're to get into the clouds and be with him forever, where we can travel in clouds to out in and outside of earth, because this is how Jesus left, and this is how he's coming back, and we're to get into them. So this is not clouds as in he's just coming in a cloud, just a spiritual cloud, and then we're leaving in a spiritual cloud to go to a spiritual place, and that it's all in your head. and that heaven's all in just, you might as well just imagine heaven. That's not true. But that's what these men on the panel want you to believe. What is true is Jesus left in an object that left the atmosphere, and he's coming back into the atmosphere in the object and bringing clouds with him that we can travel in. And so that's what that verse is talking about, is traveling with Jesus and being with him, ever being with him. These people here are going to ever be at the right hand of Jesus. That the person in the Bible that wanted to be at the right hand of Jesus, he said, it's not mine to give, but these people are going to be, and that's what they're saying. And they're saying, if you're interested in Jesus and seeing him come and go in this traveling cloud thing, then you'll be with him forever this way. So I had to go over that, okay? And then BJ says in this Isaiah passage that mentions, it says it's no sin in heaven because the sinful man it says he may live to be 100, but it says the sinful man, and so he's trying to say that there's a sinful man in the heaven that's in the Old Testament, and that is just saying it's on earth, not in the real heaven, is what B.J. Clark is trying to say, because it says where righteousness dwelleth in the new heaven, that righteousness dwelleth there. Well, that doesn't mean that these wicked people are going to be being convinced there, because the Bible talks about every kind of person in the world being wrong and having some convincing needs to be done. Even the remnant of the people who are supposed to be the just people, they need the sword of Jesus' mouth. So even in the new heaven, even the remnant is getting the sword of his mouth. So there's no one that's perfect in that heaven to begin with in the Bible. So you have to note that there's no good people in heaven either. And so because of the fact that the remnant are getting the sword of his mouth. So when you read all that and you understand that is changing, then you understand the passage in the Old Testament that mentions the sinful man is like an abomination in that passage. So also God's throne is in heaven, and they read 2 Peter and 2 Peter 3. So they go over that, but and maybe I didn't write it down. I thought I wrote it down here. Yes, here's where I wrote that. The BJ made a reference to God's throne in heaven, but it does not say Jesus' throne is in heaven. Jesus is supposed to rule on a throne over all the nations. It says in Revelations that all the kings of the earth will bring their glory and honor into it. All the kings of the earth will bring their glory and honor to a city that's here, that Jesus is ruling at. It says, because he was to rule over all nations with a rod of iron, but got called away to his Father's throne in heaven. But that you're taking the right away from Jesus to rule here with a rod of iron over all the nations. Okay? Why can't he do that if it says in Revelations that the kings of the earth are bringing their honor and their glory unto the throne? Another thing that confounds them is they think the Lamb in the Bible is Jesus. So when it says the throne of the Lord and of the Lamb, they don't realize that's a normal person, a lamb, a normal, regular person. They think that's Jesus, and they think it's saying, oh, since Jesus got called away to God and his throne, then maybe Jesus is always going to be up in heaven beside God and his throne, because we're going to call Jesus the Lamb and a Lamb. And we're going to put him beside God, and we're going to call Jesus a Lamb. When the only time he was referred to as Lamb was, behold, the Lamb of God. He was never referred to as the Lamb or a Lamb in the Bible. Check it out. And so I had to go over that. Also, he said, my kingdom is not of this world, but he said, but now is my kingdom not from hence. And that means when you look this definition up, hence, the definition hence what he's talking about. The first hence does not apply, but the second definition hence is what he's talking about. From this time a year hence. It means like saying a year hence. And that's what he's saying, in the future, in hence. And so, and then also it says after this, from this time on, after this is what that means, hence. And so when you know that definition of that word, and Jesus used that word when saying my kingdom is not of this world, and then he says, but now my kingdom is not from hence, and he's saying hence, he's saying from this time on, though, he's saying out a year from hence, he's saying hence my kingdom will be. And so that's what is in the interpretation here, if you just take a dictionary and understand the definition of hence. And so let me go back to what they were talking about. We look for a city which hath not foundations, whose builder and maker is God. That is talking about Abraham, that he looked for a city whose builder and maker is God, because God said, your seed, he said, can you count the stars? Counting the stars. He didn't say as or like. There were prophecies that his seed had become as or like the stars, but that is not what God said. He said, count the stars. And so Isaac and Jacob are in this verse here, before this verse, and it mentions him. It's Abraham that is looking for this city built by God. He's looking for star systems and things, not a physical city that's built by man, okay? And so that's what that verse is talking about. He's not talking about, I look for a heaven that's not even built of the elements of the periodical chart, and so it can't be a star or an earth I'm looking for. I'm looking for a heaven that has no elements of that we know of. That's not what that verse is talking about. But the men on the panel at GBN, that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that Abraham's looking for heaven that has made out of elements not on the periodical chart. And so also someone had called in with Psalms 104 confirms wicked people being gone, is what that passage does. It confirms that the wicked people are going to be gone. It's not what they're trying to make you see out of this verse. And so look that up and understand that's talking about wicked people being gone, not elements on the periodical chart. Now, if the men on the panel would do a YouTube and they would bring up the elements on the periodical chart every time that they're trying to refer to being disappeared, then they would get caught up in their words and in what they're trying to teach, because of it doesn't consist. That's what doesn't cohere with the Bible, is saying that elements are going to disappear, because how are you going to build a new heaven? Also Isaiah, the trees that clap their hands, in Isaiah, it says that it shall be to the Lord for a name, an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. And so this, where the trees that he was mentioning will be happy for it. They're not happy because they're going to be destroyed in that. But BJ says, yeah, they're happy they're going to be destroyed. The trees are. No, they can't continue to clap if they're fixing to be destroyed. They're gonna get stopped while they're happy. And so it says that they'll not be cut off. And that goes back to the rainbow in Genesis 9. It's the everlasting covenant that God made with us. Neither shall all flesh be cut off. And then there's two more verses there. This is a token between me and you and every living creature. And even trees are living. They're clapping. Dogs and cats that they mention will be reanimated. Well, God's covenant is with, down here in verse 16 in Genesis, every living creature, all flesh, and every living creature. So his promise is with the living creatures. That includes trees. They live. And all flesh. And every living thing. God's covenant is with all that. So, and his promise is that we will not be cut off, and that's what the rainbow is. That he will not cut us off. It's not necessarily that he's not going to destroy us with water. It's that he's not going to cut us off. He's not going to destroy our elements that make us up. He's not going to destroy trees. He's not going to destroy people. That's not happening. And that's what God's promise is. That's the covenant he's made with us. But BJ and these guys are having you believe that God's wanting to cut us off and destroy our dogs and cats and destroy our trees and never give them back to us and cut them off, you know. And in Jeremiah is the word promise that he will put his laws in our inward parts and in our hearts. He will write them. That's his covenant. Now, why is he going to do that if his objective is to just destroy us and wipe us out? That does not make sense. So you need to understand that what this GBN is teaching you, and Keith Mosier at the School of Preaching, what they're teaching you on YouTube is straight error. Okay. Now they bring up Ecclesiastes that the spirit returns to God in Ecclesiastes, and animals go to the earth, and God yeah, animals go to hell, and so does every one talent man goes to hell. But Jesus prepared a place for his mother and for those people he was talking to that were dead now and they're going to die. He's prepared a place, and that's what's in the earth, is this place for they prepared for in heaven. In heaven, he's prepared this place for people who die that are good, and in the earth is dogs and cats and people being held that are one talent people. They're just being held there under bars and chains and in darkness. And so now the Bible's clear on hell and prepared place, heaven, where God's throne is, all this stuff. I've gone over that in my YouTubes. Lay up treasures in heaven. Now, that verse that's talking about laying up treasures in heaven is also talking about the light of the body is the eye, and if it be single, then the whole body be full of light. But if it be dark, how much greater is the darkness that's in you? Okay? And that's what that's talking about, is having your single eye, that they call your single eye, dialed in. And that's what that verse is talking about, by laying up treasures in heaven, in a new world, and that where righteousness dwelleth, and looking forward to that, and keeping your focus and keeping the light in your eye, as opposed to keep having darkness and just living on earth and seeing this. And it doesn't mean heaven is a spiritual place that hasn't the elements on our periodical chart. It doesn't mean that heaven is this place and that we've got to go there, and that the earth is being destroyed. And it doesn't say all that in that text. That text is just mentioning lay up treasure in heaven, because it says having the light of your single eye dialed in, and where there's no darkness in it. And so it's not talking about destroying the elements and stuff. But these men on the panel, they only read that one verse while they're talking about destroying the elements on the periodical chart, and they say lay up treasures in heaven. That is not what that verse is talking about. It's talking about having your single eye dialed in. So I addressed the verses they go over. They don't go over many verses. You look at my other YouTube to see me define the words, especially fervent is a feeling. So look up my YouTubes. I have the truth on it. I have all the verses presented on Renovated Earth Confirmed, part 1 and 2.